Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Jonas Prida. I'm an associate provost at Point Park. And if all goes as planned, Angelo and I will be able to answer many, if not most, of your questions today about PassNo Credit option for the fall. Keep in mind, this will also happen for the spring. And so this information is probably good just to kind of know a little bit about, because you're going to be given the same option again. But we'll do another one of these webinars in the spring because, you know, things change and it's hard to remember stuff that happens yesterday, nonetheless, 3 months ago. So I'm just going to walk you through some date material first, and then I actually have a decision tree that might help you sort of like think about like, oh, what do I want to do with this? Do I really want to take the pass? How do I know when it's the better solution? Some of that kind of stuff. So the first thing to remember is for Point Park, it's not pass fail, it's PassNo Credit, which actually works better for you as a student. Because really, if you decide to take the NC, the no credit, it's essentially removed from your transcript or the fact that you ever took anything this semester. And so if you take it as a pass fail, then sometimes you still get the F on the transcript. This isn't that. This just means you don't get credit for the course. However, you still have to make up those later on in your academic career, but it just means right now it's as if they never existed. So just some things to think about as you work forward through the rest of the semester and get to this point where it's like, okay, I need to start making some decisions on what I want to do with PassNo Credit. The first thing to do, and I emphasize this both in the YouTube video and here, is finish the semester. What you don't want to have happen is like you grounded out for 13 weeks and then you're just like, I'm done now. This sucks. I don't really care enough to continue to push through. You don't want to do that because for all you know, you still might be able to pull out a C+, a B-. You might be able to still do well in the class, and that will completely change your equation for if you want to take a PassNo Credit. So in a situation like that, please remember to just finish the semester. Also, this policy covers all of it. So if you're taking an online course, you can still request PassNo Credit. You're in any kind of flex, great. You're taking all remote, who cares, right? It's all of them. Every class you have, you can take this PassNo Credit in. Faculty are, in theory, supposed to post grades by the 23rd, and they will because we're going to try to really push them to have that stuff in by December 23rd. That'll give the registrar's office 5 days, essentially, a little bit more, to sort of like clean up some of the loose ends. And then starting on December 28th, and again, you won't need to memorize this because you'll get a bunch more information both from my office and Angelo about it. But on December 28th, the portal will open, which sounds very sci-fi, and you will then be able to make your decisions on like, oh, hey, in my Psych 207 class, I ended up getting a C- in that. I don't want that, so I'm going to take that just as a pass. Or, oh, hey, I got an A in my Psych 207 class. I want to keep that grade. And so between December 28th and January 6th, so that period is when you're going to be able to make these decisions on PassNo Credit. Once your decision's made, you don't really get to go back and change it, however. So it was the #1 thing that happened last semester when we did this, is students oftentimes jumped the gun a little bit and were like, oh yeah, remember how I said I wanted all those to be no credit? What I really meant was I want 2 of them to be no credit, but 1 of them to be pass. I'm going to say try not to do that. In theory, there is no going back. However, we also know that we're humans and that sometimes we make mistakes and bad judgments. And so we tried to work with the registrar's office and IT to allow students to be able to kind of like hop back in time a little bit especially if you had, everybody has a reason, but if the reason was like a legitimate one of, oh, I had to scramble because I was flying to blank. Hopefully no one's flying anywhere right now, but those kind of things. Also remember, if you don't want to change grades, this is one of the beauties of the system, you don't have to do anything. So if you're a student who has 2 A's and 2 A minuses, and you're like, I'm pretty happy with the 3.7 or whatever that turns out to be, the default is that the grades work. So you don't need to do anything in a situation like that. It's only when you're making the decision to change a grade that you have to do anything in the portal. And that portal is found, it'll be through Point Web, much as it was last semester for those of you who are here, if you aren't a first-time student. And it just brings up drop-down menu. And you can be like P, P, N, N, A. And then all of a sudden it looks like you got a 4.0 that semester. If you really want to cheat the system. So that's the way to think about this, is like, okay, I'm just going to barrel through. I'm going to do my best until the end of the semester and make sure that I'm doing well in my classes. Because if you do well, then none of this really matters. And then starting on the 28th, that's when you can start making your decisions of, oh, okay, what's going to be the pass? What's going to be the no credit? And then how does all that stuff work for me? Just a couple other things before I sort of bring up this decision tree. When I mentioned about the no credit, meaning you still have to make up those credits later, that's essentially this idea. If you had a 15 credit semester and you had 3 A's, 1 P, and then had 1 N, right, where you had a class that you didn't do very well in, really what that means is you only successfully took 12 credits. And so you're behind, you're not really, but it just means you're going to have to pick up those 3 credits somewhere else in order to get to the magical land of 120 credits or more that you need to graduate from Point Park. It's not terrible. It means one of your semesters you might have to take 18 credits. You might have to take a summer class. Part of it is your decisions on what would I rather have. Do I want to gamble with maybe getting a D in the class? Or am I willing to be like, you know what, I really am just going to take the no credit here because it's going to be easier for me to make up this course and do it in a way that's more reflective of my brain power. And so again, that's one of those things that's you should think about. Also talk to your faculty, your program directors, the people at the Center for Student Success. Angelo will probably be able to speak a little bit to this, because they're going to have a little bit more of an understanding of how it might affect long-term decision-making, especially if this is your first semester ever at Point Park. That'll change the equation slightly. Angelo, do you have anything you want to add to that part?
I would just add, this is a pretty nuanced decision, it seems, from my interactions with my students in the School of Business. So I would encourage you to reach out, as Jonas said, to first your faculty member, as you know, they're pretty experienced in the curriculum and in the actual class itself. But I would reach out to your success coordinator if you have questions. But just to clarify, you do not have to reach out to the Center for Student Success to go through this process. This process will go through the portal, as Jonas said, but if you need some of that guidance and advice on what does a P or an NC do to my progression or degree on it or things like that, do reach out to us. Your specific success coordinator should be listed in Point Web or the main CSS email I just listed in the chat. It is css@pointpark.edu.
Thank you. Yeah, the CSS does enough work. They don't necessarily need every one of your decisions to be asked and covered, because frankly, you're adults and you can make good decisions on your own. Our job is to just help to provide the support to make those good decisions and help you when it's something that you really have a question about. It's like, is this going to kill me if, I'll use a better term than that given COVID, is this going to work against me if I want to go to law school, if I take a pass in my poli-sci 201 course? Probably not, but you might want to ask a law school person about that question instead of asking me, because that wasn't really where I lived. And so some of it is just going to be knowing your resources and knowing who to talk to. And if you ever have questions on this stuff, an easy place to go to look at all of it is going to be the Center for Inclusive Excellence. So I run that center. It's where all of the PassNo Credit resources are held for students. You can check out our new, there's a YouTube video there, there's all of this other stuff, and you can just email me there and be like, hey, Dr. Prida, I'm not really sure what this would mean for me to stay eligible for athletics, right? That's one we got a lot of. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't necessarily always know either, but in 15 minutes, I can get you the answer because I can talk to somebody who does. And it'll just save you, as students, a lot of the legwork. So then you can spend your time making the decision instead of spending your time trying to track somebody down who can help you make the decision. I would like to spend the next couple minutes just walking you through a decision tree. Hopefully I'm smart enough to figure out how all this is going to work. Okay.
As you're pulling that up, I just want to reiterate to everybody, I am posting in the main chat. As Jonas is saying certain things, I'm just calling them out in the chat, like the date, time frame that you can, the portal opens. And again, Jonas said there's going to be more information coming from both his office and the Center for Student Success, so you don't have to scramble writing these dates down. But one, I am reiterating some points in the chat, including CSS email and Jonas's email. I've also referenced the tutoring center as well. As Jonas said, the main thing is you have to finish the semester first, right? So don't forget about the tutoring center, right? If you're trying to finish strong here, maybe you don't need to use PassNo Credit. Maybe you can get to a point where you're comfortable with the letter grade. Don't forget about the tutoring center. That information is in there as well. And then the last thing I'm just going to mention real quick is just we will be opening up the Q&A. So if you have questions, just stay tuned. It will be sent privately via the questions area of the chat. So just stay tuned there. Jonas,
Angelo, I have a completely grayed out like show screen button, and so when I click on it, nothing's happening for me. So whatever that's worth to you.
Let me look here real quick. We might not be able to get this. Jonas, what you want to do? No, under the drop down box, you select the screen you want it to look at. Do you see under the play button? Do you see that?
Yep, and it doesn't allow me to do anything. Like I can't even click the buttons.
Give me one more second. I think I know what to do.
And if not, no problem. I can walk people through this with the power of their imagination. Oh, show my screen.
Try it again right now. I think I had myself as the presenter. There it is. Sorry, everybody. Thanks for staying along with that. That's how you problem solve in the middle of a live webinar.
All right. So I'm assuming people can see deciding whether to take a PassNo Credit. This lovely design that was put together by Jamie Kerr, my coordinator. Again, this is available at the CIE website, but it's kind of operates like a choose your own adventure, where you can begin if like, oh, do I need to take a PassNo Credit in this course? And so we just kind of like helped people walk through what some of your decisions can be. So if you have a B or higher in the course, in most cases, keep the letter grade, because you're unless you have a really demanding reason to like, oh, I have to get a 4.0, then a B is going to be great, And then if that answer is no, like kind of got like a C minus world, then just move down to our next ones here. Are you comfortable with the grade you have in the class? Oh yeah, I got no problem getting a C in here. I just need credits. It's not in my major. Who cares, right? Keep the letter grade. And then again, do you expect to improve your grade? This goes back to Angelo's comment 2 minutes ago of like, oh yeah, I can probably improve my grade. I'll hit the tutoring center. I'll try, some of those kind of things, and then I'll keep the grade again. And if that is no, I'm tanking this class right now. This is not great for me. Then here's your big one. Are you in a GPA dependent situation? For example, you might be in a major that requires you to get a C or better in a certain course. So those are going to be ones where it's really going to be worth your time to talk to your academic department or a CSS coordinator to find out of like, what should I do here? A lot of this would be a lot of COPA students might be in this situation where you can't really advance on if you get something lower than a C. So ask somebody. Don't just make a blind decision here. Send an email, set up a Teams meeting, talk to somebody for 5 minutes, and that will really help inform where you need to go. And then again, hey, no, what do I care? I'm in my 3rd semester, right? It doesn't really matter how I'm doing right now. And then we have, okay, there's another one. Do I have more than a year before graduation? And then if that answer is no, all right, if you're like, come on it pretty soon, might be worth your time to take the credit because you don't want an F to prevent you from graduating. And then if it's here, you got more than a year before you graduate, yeah, I do. So maybe I'll just take a P in the class because it will allow me to ask other kinds of questions. You know, if I want to go to graduate school, med school, something like that, then we have a different set of conversations to set up. And again, if it's no, and you're just like, really what I want to do is graduate with a Point Park degree, so to allow me to begin to operate in the professional space, then having a pass is fine. It's an important thing to think about with this is, as colleges and universities see PassNo Credit more, it becomes less of something that's an anomaly on a student's record. And so it's not like because sort of before COVID, when people saw a pass or a NC on somebody's transcript, there was always this concern of like, oh, what was wrong with that student? That was poor, right? That never should have been the case, but universities move slowly. But now, because so many schools have done this, it's becoming less and less of a surprise when it shows up. And so it matters less and less for people on the other end that you might have 1 or 2 P's or an N on a transcript, because they're going to know like, oh, that was the year that the global pandemic happened. I'm glad this student was smart about what they did, and instead of trying to do something that was foolish, they instead just did the wise thing that their university offered and allowed them to get out. So again, you can find this exact document on the CIE website. There, as I mentioned before, there's also a YouTube video that we put together with online that kind of walks you through a similar situation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, just because I want to get back to looking at people, and looking at boxes isn't great. Okay, here we are. So again, you don't have to memorize what's going on in there. It's just ways, again, to think about, oh, okay, if I know I'm doing well in the class, I never have to do anything about it as well. I got a 4.0, I'm going to stay with my 4.0. Super. But it's when it starts to get into that slightly murkier world, that's when there's just 2 or 3 other decisions that are going to be worth your time to ask about. One other thing, sort of before we get to some questions that hopefully there are some out there. If you take an incomplete in a class, what some people may do, you can't go back and then also take a PassNo Credit. So it's kind of one or the other, because you can take an incomplete for up to a year. And so in a year, hopefully, we're going to be dealing with a whole different situation, right? You'll probably be able to see your instructors again. Will likely have a vaccine. All these things that are going to help return us to whatever the new normal is going to be. And so because of that, the university doesn't want to set up students where they can kind of get 2 outs, right? Where it's like, oh, I took the incomplete. I didn't really like what I got on the incomplete, so I want to take a PassNo Credit. That just isn't. Part of this is about fairness to all students. And I think we understand that. But just in case you were thinking about like, oh, how will an incomplete work? An incomplete's great. If you feel like an incomplete is appropriate, take it, right? There's no reason you shouldn't also ask for it. It's just it's a different tool to use than PassNo Credit is. Angelo, do we have any questions or anything coming up that I should talk more about, or?
So right now, I haven't given the green light to anybody to start asking
Oh,
questions yet. So
okay.
no questions have come in, but whenever you're ready for them, we can give the green light and
Hey,
start
I'm
answering.
ready now. I want to talk to the people.
Let's do it. All right, so everybody, right now we are going to open it up for the Q&A. To be able to ask a question, please go to the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel. Your questions will come in private, so nobody else is going to see it. Jonas and I will answer it without giving away who you are, so you can just ask the question. So go for it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Ask away. We'll give them a second here to get those questions typed up. Again, this is in the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel. So please ask away. Athletes, if you're in online classes,
Yes.
I'm trying to think of scenarios that might make sense here to ask the question. I think we may have had some ground students that took online only classes, the termed classes. Maybe you took a term 1 class. Do you know when you get to pick PassNo Credit? So these are things to start thinking about. Ask away. I'm waiting for who's going to break the ice here?
That's right. That's always is the first one.
You know, maybe Jonas, while we're waiting, I'll break the ice with this question. Actually, it surrounds the whole online only termed classes. So if somebody did take a term 1 class, so October 31st through like middle of October, did they already do PassNo Credit, or is it all one fell swoop where they'll have to go back to their term 1
they'll
class?
have to go back because we did not have the portal up and ready for that. And so if you had a term 1 class that didn't go as well as you'd wanted it to, then yeah, you're going to be able to still go back and be like, I just want that as a P or a NC. Because we've already had some students ask about that. And again, it's a reasonable tool. You're not doing anything untoward by making this decision. It's just the university's allowing all students to make this choice. And so if it helps you, take advantage of it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Let's see, we still got a lot of people here in the webinar, which is fantastic. And I know Jonas is also fantastic, but I'm sure he didn't answer every question just in the explanation up front. All right, we got a few coming in. Let's see.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for getting the ball rolling here. So I have I have 3 credits left. I want to know, if I take a no credit for 2 courses this semester, do I still need to make it up in my last semester with the same instructor? What it sounds like here, Jonas, is that this student seems to think the class isn't going to be considered as complete if they take the pass. Is that the way you're seeing that too? I want to know, if I take a no credit for 2 courses this semester, do I still need to make up for it in my last semester and with the same instructor?
So 2-part question. So it doesn't have to be with the same instructor, but you still will need to make up the 6 credits to allow you to graduate. That's the one downside of taking the NC is essentially saying like, oh, no harm, no foul, but it also means you don't collect the experience points, to mix my metaphors, that allow you to then get ready to graduate. But it doesn't have to be with the same instructor. It doesn't even have to be in the same class. It just needs to fulfill your major or degree requirements to allow you to continue to move forward to graduation. That was an excellent question. Nobody asked us that last year.
Yeah, that was a great question. And my apologies, I at first read it incorrectly. So it obviously makes a lot more sense now. Yes.
If that's not accurate, anonymous question asker, ask again in the question chat, or you can email me directly and I'll try to do a better job with it.
They did ask a follow-up question. Does a pass affect the overall GPA?
No, a pass does not affect your overall GPA. So if you have 117 credits of a 4.0 and your final grade in your last class was a B, take the pass. I know I'm probably not supposed to tell you that, but from a practical standpoint, that could be a way to do it, right? And yeah, it's going to show up in your transcript, but nobody's going to care. Again, unless you're trying to get into Harvard or Oxford or something like that. But
So, and that's actually a good transition to the next question, Jonas. Someone did ask, and this gets brought up a lot. I hear this a lot from my students, so I think it's good to retouch on this. Will a pass no credit on my transcript affect my admissions to graduate school?
I can give let me give the holistic answer to it. They'll ask you questions about it, and you'll be able to talk to whoever's on the other end of where you're trying to get into about why you made the choice. So probably the best thing to do, and Point Park will have this as well in our graduate programs, right? Let's say it's our PsyD program, which is nationally competitive. They get a person who comes in as like has 2 passes on a transcript and 3 A's. Probably the smartest thing to do will be to contact where you're trying to get into ahead of time, and just make sure of like, hey, can I talk to a graduate admissions counselor? I have everything else that you're looking for, but like every other student in America, Point Park allowed a pass no credit option. I took 2 passes in these classes that they might be in your major, they might be general ed course, whatever. What about that? Or do I need to write about this in my letter of inquiry? Right, because that's the second part of what's going to happen is as you're putting together your grad package, you're going to write a letter of some kind, and so that might be an interesting thing to talk about. Just like, oh, I had to make this decision on if I wanted to do pass no credit. I'd much rather have a pass on my transcript than a C minus that I might have got because I was living in a apartment building where there was 4 of us and Wi-Fi was spotty, right? Because there's a lot of reasons that people are going to pay attention to now, because I think we understand that this is a really weird space for students, and that even the best student is going to struggle now because it's been 100 years since we faced this.
All very good points. And so far, everybody, thank you for these questions. I encourage you to keep on asking.
Yeah.
We've got a couple that are in queue that we will continue to get through, but keep on pushing them through the chat or the question.
Trying to go to graduate school. It's a great idea.
What's that? Me?
No. That the anonymous student is pushing through to graduate school, even given where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's see the next question. So if you take the pass, it just shows that you passed the course. You don't need to take it again, correct?
Correct. You got it. Like it's considered done. And so if you have to take and it will count as a prerequisite as well, right? If you have to take Psych 201 to get into 301, if you get a P in the course, you still get to advance to go to collect $200. I don't know if anybody plays Monopoly anymore.
I still do. I play it on my Switch though. I don't play it on the board anymore, you know, because those pieces just fly off and then the game's ruined, right?
Yep.
Takes too long. Let's see. Oh, this is a good question. Do you know what GPA or letter grades should look like to stay in the honor society?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. As a person who helps to run the honors program, it's generally 3.0 to stay. It might be a little bit more than that, but I don't think it's that much more. And this is going to be one of those things where, again, if you feel like, oh, I'm right on the cusp, or this isn't really going in the direction I need to, this is a time to reach out to Sarah Matthew, who's the honors director, or Brendan Mullen, who's the assistant honors director, and just check in and say like, hey, I had some real troubles this semester, X, Y, and Z happened. Is there something I can do? But I'm pretty sure it's a 3.0.
Perfect. This next question, let's see. I think we kind of touched on it, but it's worth definitely reiterating. So I am set to graduate after this semester. Congratulations to this person.
Yes.
How will taking a pass rather than a letter grade affect my GPA and graduation?
So it will, if you take the pass, it won't affect your GPA at all, right? And so if you had a 3.1 and took a pass, you would stay at a 3.1. But if you had like an A in that last course, then all of a sudden you might have a 3.3 cumulative GPA, and so it actually works better for you. It's still going to allow you, obviously, to graduate because you're getting the credits. The GPA calculation, again, in when something like this, where it might be this close, feel free to contact me specifically or the registrar, and we can quickly and literally quickly figure out like, oh yeah, you're better off taking the B you might have in the class as opposed to just taking the pass, because the pass just freezes everything where it is.
Perfect. Let's see. This next one is a really solid question. I have heard that the pass can affect kids' scholarships.
Yes. So this is a tricky one that, again, is going to, it will depend on what we mean by effect, right? And I don't mean to sound like you're a professor right here, but you know, if you got if you're taking 5 classes, you got 4 classes that are an A, and then 1 course that you tanked but got like a D in, take the pass and you still have a 4.0, right? And so that's going to cause you no problems. In a situation like this, best case scenario, talk to financial aid, because that they'll know a little bit more about the ins and outs of like where you're going to be with what you need for what kind of scholarship, because I just don't have all that information at the ready. Or contact me sort of out of the webinar and just say, hey, I have a blank GPA, I'm on presidential scholarship, what are some ways forward on this? And again, it'll be pretty easy for me to give you more specific advice on that. But right now, because there's so many different scholarships, it's hard to. But the key will be not to guess and to ask somebody. Again, ask George Santucci, ask Misty Abraham, ask me. One of us will be able to like, oh, okay, here's how you're going to be able to think about this. But you're right, that's an excellent question. Then the key is not to have it work against your scholarship.
Exactly. This next question, I'm going to actually tackle the answer up front, Jonas, and then you can weigh in at the end if there's anything I missed. So this is a graduate student, which I don't advise, but I think I know how to answer this. I'm a graduate student, and my next semester will be the last one. So again, congratulations to you on heading into the back end of your degree. If I want to take a no credit on classes this fall, and those classes don't take place in the spring, so they're fall only, how will that work? Now, just the initial thing I'm going to say coming from a CSS perspective is reach out to your graduate advisor ASAP and let them know that this is the situation. Give them all of the information and details. If this was something that came on my desk, I would immediately be reaching out to the department chair and trying to figure out, you know, are they offered in a different modality that maybe normally you can't get into, but we can get approval for? There's other accommodations that could be made, but I'm not going to just toss out ideas until really you start that process with reaching out to your graduate advisor. Jonas, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Hard agree with all of that. Just immediately talk to whoever your advisor is, a program coordinator, whomever, and be honest with where you are in it. Because what you don't want to do is only give them like 80% of the story, give them all the story. And I'm not saying you wouldn't, but oftentimes we shade truth. And just say like, hey, I need this to, what's my solution out? Because as Angelo said, there's a lot of ways around this problem. You might be able to do a course substitution. Somebody might be able to do an independent study with you. Because the key is here that we don't want to put up barriers to students graduating. And I don't want, especially when it's something that is you have no control over, which is a virus mutated and now here's where we are.
The other thing that I would add to that student who said this, and I'm not as privy to incompletes in the graduate level either, but maybe this is an incomplete approach, you know, like depending on how much you completed in the semester thus far, if you've completed over 50% of it, but a mitigating circumstance, you know, obviously we all have a mitigating circumstance, I think, with COVID, but I mean, if something like specifically occurred, you know, again, that's where having this conversation with your success coordinator, your faculty advisor, the program coordinator, the department chair. This is translatable to an undergrad, to a graduate student. Have those conversations so that we can help problem solve. But maybe an incomplete here is an option. If they're not offered again in the spring, as Jonas said earlier, pending the approval, these could be approved up to a year after the semester concludes. So, you know, it's just something to think about. But I would, especially being a graduate student, reach out to your graduate advisor and they will assist. All right, next up, we got another question. Next semester, I am taking a class that says the grade type is PassNo Credit as opposed to regular. What exactly does that mean?
Yes. So that is going to be a course where you're essentially not going to have this option because it's already built into the course where you either pass it and it will tell you like, oh, you need a C minus or better or whatever the specifics of it are to pass. And if anything falls below that, it's a no creditor. So sometimes writing classes or proficiency based classes are built around this model because you either like can show the skill or you can't. So that's what that means. It's essentially this same decision. You just don't get to make the decision. The instructor will.
Great question. Another really great one that I haven't thought of. Is there a certain number of PassNo Credit courses you can take throughout your entire time at Point Park?
So there used to be. This was a thing that was in the university catalog, but all of that has been essentially moved aside because of this. And it used to be a pretty small amount of them. I think it was 3 or 4. It was kept low, kind of on purpose, again because they didn't want people to be able to abuse the system. But as it is now, no, you're not going to be punished for any of this stuff because for all we know, it's going to be spring and it might even be fall and next year we have to do PassNo Credit because we're still going to be like, how is this thing working? And it would be unfair to you as a student who made wise decisions on taking passes instead of a bunch of D's to get punished for something that nobody's ever thought of. So the short answer to a lot of me talking is going to be, you have nothing to worry about.
Absolutely. Jonas, so at this point, we have gone through all the questions that have been asked, but to everybody who's still here, and we still have a good group of students here, we still have 15 minutes available to answer your questions. So at this stage, what I'll do is I'll start to, move us around the corner here. Number one, if you have gotten all the answers to your questions or the information that you need, you're more than welcome to exit the webinar whenever you're good to go. I do ask whenever you exit the webinar, there will be a survey that pops up at the end. It's only 3 questions. We do these Center for Student Success, the university at large, we do these webinars intentionally to try to bridge that gap and to talk to you. And this data at the end helps us follow up and make sure that we are giving you the kind of love and attention you deserve. And so we can do these better in the future. So please take a moment, fill out that survey. If you'll have the option in there to give us feedback and to ask an additional question, maybe you didn't feel comfortable asking it here in the webinar. Anything you ask in that survey, myself or Jonas's office, we will follow up with you and get you the answer that you need. So please take the time to fill out that survey. And if you have other questions, now is the time to ask. I'm going to give a kind of like a final call here for questions. I see another one did come through.
And I'll have, go ahead, sorry, Angelo, please.
It's okay. So this question is, so is the PassNo Credit has the PassNo Credit only been available this year, or has it always existed?
It has always existed sneakily in the university handbook or student handbook and university catalog. So it's kind of it's always been around, but it's one of those things that universities across the nation don't really have a lot of experience and don't really want to tell students that it exists because it makes it hard to deal with certain kinds of questions like, hey, I want to transfer somewhere. What happens if I have a P on my transcript? And then the school you're trying to transfer to, they don't know what to do with it. And so it forces institutions to ask questions that they don't have answers to, and that makes institutions nervous. It's been one of the good things about what we're dealing with now is all of that's going to go away because we're going to have an entire 2 years maybe of students all are going to have some version of this on a transcript. And so it's going to make it easier to transfer schools when you have a PassNo Credit. It's going to make it so like it matters a little bit less if you have PassNo Credit. But great question on like, yeah, it's always been around. It just gets used less than even something like an incomplete, because students immediately go to the incomplete instead of thinking of PEN.
Great question. This next one, I have a 3.67 GPA. Congratulations on that. Would a letter grade of a B be a good time to exercise the pass option?
Yes. Especially if you're later in your career, right? Because if you're at 110 credits, the B doesn't really help her. It can only kind of hurt a little bit, right? It's going to maybe move it down by a decimal point, and so that's one. Certainly take the P on that. If you're early in your career, right? If this is your second semester somehow or your third semester, then maybe you take the grade, and then because then you can just build up from there. But I think in this situation, taking the pass is probably the wiser decision grade wise, especially if you feel like you learned what you needed to out of the course.
And also play around with a GPA calculator, right? And see, like Jonas is mentioning, it may only move it a couple decibels or something, and then you really have a decision on your hand. I mean, if this student goes from a 3.67 to like a 3.65, 3.63,
you're getting the graduate school.
Yeah, if it were me, I don't know if I would take the pass at that point. You know what I mean? I may want the letter grade, but that's a personal decision in that case, and we're kind of hypothesizing. But what I would recommend is play around with the GPA calculator too. You can see the different scenarios and see how it will play out, so you have full transparency of the decision that you're about to make. Next question here. What is the lowest grade you can have to use the pass option?
The D is the cutoff point, and I don't think D minus gets the count, right? I think it's the D. Anything above that is a pass. And the F translates into the N, largely. It would be, and this is why historically there's been some concern about PassNo credits, is a student who has a D and a student who has a B, if they both take a pass, it looks like they both did the same in a classroom. And so faculty sometimes have a struggle with that, but faculty also are wise to where we are right now, and so they're also recognize that this is a confusing time for everybody involved.
Now, Jonas, I actually want to ask you a question to follow up on that. There may be, as I think you alluded to, like maybe in COPA, where there may be some classes where that standard has to be like maybe a C minus or a C. Will the portal recognize that? Like if you're in just say COPA 250, which I don't think applies to this, so it's a terrible example, but COPA 250, if the requirement is C minus or higher, will the system know that and you go in, you see you have a C, plus, so that now you can make that decision? It will notice that?
Yeah, as long as we've gotten that material from the various instructors, then yes, it will recognize that. Much like the student who asked earlier about courses that are already built in, P and C, right? Like the system will recognize that, and it just won't even bring it up for you in some of those cases. But again, and if you have a question about that, I'm not really sure how this is going to work, email me, right? Let somebody know, and I'll immediately be able to be like, oh, here's how you can get in contact with somebody who's going to help you through this.
Yeah, and also I could say that CSS would have some pretty good insight on that as well too. I'm privy to the School of Business and what I advise, and I know like A.B. Kier, for example, who is the coordinator for the dance, Kate P-Rat, who is for musical theater and stuff, they definitely would know the answers to those questions. So reach out to them, reach out to us, Jonas's office, absolutely. All right, let's see, we're at 12:52, handful of students still in here, so thank you for still sticking around. I do not have any other questions in the pipeline, so this is the last call for a question, and as we see if any other kind of fall in. Jonas, do you want to give us any final words?
Yeah, only that continue to read your email from Point Park. Again, I know that that's stupid. Of course you do. But I also know that we're barraged with information every day. Because there also is going to be some more stuff coming out about what's going to go on next semester. And so, again, it's all going to be high flex, remote, all of that kind of stuff. And so what you don't want to do is come into next semester not knowing what's going on, right? And have this moment of like, wait, am I supposed to be in class today? Because my office is going to be able to push out a lot more of that information. So it's stuff that comes out of CIE, CSS. It's just good to know who we are and what we do. And as hopefully we've done a job of today, this is about allowing students to succeed, right? And that's fundamentally what all of this should be about, is like, how do we enable you as students to make the good decisions that allow you to be successful? And so if you have questions, you're not making me do anything other than my job by asking them. Like, right, like sometimes students are like, oh, I know you're busy, and I'm like, yeah, I'm busy, but I'm supposed to be busy because you pay my salary. It's okay to ask me questions. And so if you don't know what's going on, just send me something, shoot me an email, Teams message, whatever, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Thank you for that, Jonas. And, as you and I were even talking about before this started, we're both so grateful to be where we are. I think Point Park is, doing a great job at servicing students and helping us get into, get out of the fall semester and into the next one. So, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We're grateful for your questions. I always try to respond to students and thank them when they reach out with a question, and thank them for asking me, because students do sometimes feel like they're bothering their faculty, their staff, their provost, right? So take this as an open invitation to reach out with questions or concerns. Jonas, I'd like to thank you for your time. You're a busy man, so thank you for doing this. I want to thank everybody who attended, and for those who are actually watching this recording right now, as this is going to be uploaded to CSS's YouTube. Thank you for watching this. Make sure you follow the CSS on all of our social media at Point Park CSS. And then I also, just before we sign off, reiterate, fill out the survey. If you ask any questions, Jonas's team or my team, or it's not my team, CSS or myself, will follow up. And then I just want to also say congratulations for still being here. Congratulations on still moving through this process, whether you're thinking of taking a no credit, whether you withdrew from a class. Honestly, I've been telling all my students this, and I just want to reiterate the fact that you're still here. If there's ever been a year to put the brakes down or to hit the pause button, 2020, I guess, could be a year to come up with an excuse, but you're still here. You're still working hard. You came to this webinar, you're watching this recording, and that means that shows a lot of character and a lot of your drive. So I'm proud of you guys. Keep it up.
Yep, agreed. Hard agree, somebody even say.
All right. Well, Jonas, anything else? If not, we're going to say goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, everybody, have a happy and safe holiday. Thanks for being here. Keep an eye on your emails, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, Al.
See you later.